Hey, all my IFG friends, this is Steve. I want to say, if you like movies like I do, we've started a new podcast called Happy Hour Flicks. You can find it anywhere podcasts are found. It's all about nostalgic movies that we love, and we bring on special guests each episode, and we also have specialty cocktails made for each one, too. So it really is an hour of a good time talking about movies that we love, like Gremlins, Seven, Free Willy. We talk about The Last Starfighter also. I mean, we kind of run the gamut across all the decades and really have a great time. So wanted to invite you to come over and join us. That's Happy Hour Flicks, anywhere podcasts are found.
Financing independent movies is very, very hard, as most filmmakers know. I had the financing fall apart 3 times within 12 months going into production.
This is the
Independent
Filmmakers Guide
from Framework Productions.
Framework
Productions.
This is the Independent Filmmakers Guide. James, today we're talking to Eytan Rockaway, the director of the new film LANKSY.
That's right. It stars Harvey Keitel, Sam Worthington, and an all-star cast all around. He was able to get a bunch of great actors in there and make an incredible, great film about a real character on an indie budget.
Yeah, again, this is a really tight budget that they're doing with big names and on location in Alabama. We hear all about all of that. Vertical Films is distributing it, and we go even into, financing and distribution of a film. So all around, pretty awesome talk.
As always, you're going to hear us talk through from the beginning, the inception of writing the film, through his process in fundraising, which I always think is such a huge thing for people to get their heads around, and understanding what it really takes to mount an independent film and raise that capital. We go through all of that with Eytan. And then, of course, we go into production. As always, we talk cameras, lights, working with actors, high profile actors like Harvey Keitel, Sam Worthington, people like that. And then, of course, going through distribution as well.
I'm Stephen Pierce.
And I'm James Allerdyce.
This is the Independent Filmmakers Guide. You did a horror film, and now this is a gangster film, basically, right?
Yes. So the first one was a small horror movie. Was with Jason Patrick and Louisa Cruz. We shot it for $850,000. It got some legs. It got picked up by IFC Midnight. And this is the second one. And it's a crime drama about, and a biopic about Meyer Lansky, the notorious gangster.
Yeah, so I wasn't familiar with Meyer Lansky at all. So, and for anyone that hasn't seen the film yet, it just released right now with Vertical, right?
Yes, it released with Vertical domestically and internationally with Universal. We're now pretty happy because it's currently top 3 across all platforms for sales. So everybody's very excited. And yeah, Vertical did the domestic distribution. I'm pretty happy to have them because unlike other distributors, I get at least to be in theaters, VOD, Blu-ray, DVD, the whole shebang. And then eventually it's going to be on Amazon Prime 3 months after the theatrical and VOD and stuff.
Yeah, so I want to talk to you a lot about your strategy in there. And James, I promise I'm gonna stop driving this so you can get in here too. But I'm curious, for people that haven't seen the film yet, because it just came out. What is LANKSY about? Can you just do the kind of quick your elevator pitch?
Yeah, well, Meyer Lansky was one of the most famous American gangsters in history. He was the pioneer of gambling in America, and he also formed what was back then called, in the 1930s and 40s, the National Crime Syndicate. So they took the bosses from all across America, put them into one organization, and they formed one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world, controlling everything from narcotics, gambling. I mean, it was everybody from Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, and so on. What was unique about him is that he was also a businessman and an academic. So he actually took organized crime and structured it like a Fortune 500 company. So he's the first one that actually structured the organization and made it into a multi-billion-dollar business throughout. So he was a notorious gangster, but at the same time, he was a great businessman and an academic and genius with numbers. So it's a very unique character.
Okay, and obviously, I mean, it just feels like it has screenplay written all over it. I mean, it just feels like it starts to write itself. Is this an idea you've had for a long time that you wanted to write about, or did you start learning more about this character and then what was the inception of
Well,
writing?
my father is a history professor, and one of his areas of his expertise was organized crime in America. So I grew up with stories, and he wrote a book about gangsters called "But He Was Good to His Mother." So I grew up with these stories about gangsters, fascinated about them, and he also actually interviewed Meyer Lansky before he died. So the protagonist in the screenplay, David Stone, is actually based on my father and their interviews. So yeah, that's the inception of that.
The film is it has Harvey Keitel in it and a great cast surrounding him. And it really is two separate worlds. There's one in like the 1980s, I guess, in like Miami. And then we go back into his earlier life. So there's a younger version of the titular character that Harvey Keitel plays. So how did that all stack out for shooting? So first of all, how did you guys, what was your schedule like, and how did you end up making that all happen?
Well, the first thing is we shot in Alabama. The reason everything was shot in Alabama, and the reason we shot there is because they have the Gulf Shores in Orange Beach, which looks like Miami in the 1980s, because Alabama shores really border with Florida. So, and then we had also cities there like Mobile, which have buildings from the 1930s and 40s, which were perfect for the exterior in New York in the 1930s and 40s. So we had everything that we needed in Alabama to shoot these two time periods. Our schedule was 20 days, which was nothing. So the way I approached it is we shot everything in the 1980s for the first 2 weeks, and then everything in the 1930s and 40s the second 2 weeks. So it was essentially shooting two separate movies in one and then combining them together and editing.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did the locations work with that? Were all the locations the same, or did you have to hop back and forth between those two time decades?
We had to hop back and forth between these two time decades, yeah. But I mean, I was amazed by the amount of things we could get in Alabama. Obviously, when we did location scouting, I wanted to because it's such a small budget movie, and I wanted to make it look big. So I tried inserting as much as I could with these extravagant, beautiful locations and scenery and stuff to just open up the world a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do one of the things you're always told when you're making an independent film is cast name actors, like you get names in it. Obviously you got a great name in your film. All four of the leads I have seen in other work. So how did you go about your casting process?
Well, at first, the first person, Danny Abakasser, who is one of the actors in Lansky, he knew Harvey Keitel's daughter. So he got the screenplay to him. Harvey Keitel loved the screenplay. He's an ex-Marine, New Yorker, grew up on the rough side. So they have a lot of similarities, and obviously he loved the story. And so he got attached to the screenplay. But from the moment that we attached him, it took 3 years until we made the movie. Now, Harvey and I live in the same area in New York. So I used to see him in the street walking around. And I'm like, hey, Harvey, it's the director of Lansky. He's like, hey. So the first year it was like, he really liked me. The second year, he's like, okay, here's this annoying guy again. The third year, he thought I was already like, a stalker or something like that. So, but when we finished shooting the movie, he gave me a book by Kazan, and he wrote there to my dear friend Eytan, the only stalker I ever was happy got caught up to me, basically.
That's great.
And then after that, once we had Harvey Keitel, he's a big pull for actors, because he's a legendary actor. He was head of the actor studio for 2 decades. Everybody wants to work with him because he's just such a great actor, and he's very, very picky. And then we hired Billy Hopkins and Ashley Ingram, which are very well-known casting directors in New York, and they helped us get the rest of the cast to surround him.
Man, they had to be super happy whenever you called them and you're like, we already have Harvey Keitel attached.
Definitely. I mean, every time you say Harvey Keitel attached, everybody gets excited and happy. So
I'm sure it just changes the mode of the conversation. You said so it took 3 years to make the film. Why?
Well, just financing. I mean, from the moment I wrote the screenplay, financing, just to give you financing independent movies is very, very hard, as most filmmakers know. I had the financing fall apart 3 times within 12 months going into production. So imagine that you're sitting at home, you think you're going to shoot in 3 months, you get a call from your producer at 3 o'clock in the morning, says all the fucking financing fell, we have to start from scratch. That happened 3 times within a year. I mean, it was really, really nerve-wracking, especially when you're doing financing that's based on foreign sales, that's based on domestic sales. You have a foreign sales company, they take the cast, they go to, one of the film markets, they try selling the movie. If they don't hit the numbers, your equity investors say, okay, we're not doing it. So it was very, very nerve-wracking pre-production on this movie and getting the financing. Luckily, we managed to get the financing, in place. But I remember the first week that I was in Alabama doing scouting, and with the crew, we didn't know if we had the financing. So I'm, running around with my crew, not knowing if we're going to have to shut down within a week. I mean, it's there's something about independent filmmaking that really shows you what making movies is about. I mean, when you do a studio movie, you don't have to worry about financing, but you do have to worry about all the creative aspects because you have so many hands, trying to mold it. Independent filmmaking, you get the freedom, but it's nerve-wracking because things like financing and stuff like that come up all the time. And
it's such an important point, I think, and it's something that I think a lot of people may not truly understand, if they haven't made an independent film, because we've all heard about independent films and everyone wants to watch an independent film. But I think, there's a common perception that's kind of missing there, where they're not really a lot of people aren't understanding that in an independent film, you are starting your own business 100%. That you are then raising capital for. 100%. And, I think a lot of people, obviously a lot of the independent films that we see these days are, half of them are made by studios, right? That are making smaller, quote unquote, independent films. But true independent films, like what you did, is starting your own business and then raising capital and seeking investors, which is huge. I mean, it's the same thing as starting a restaurant or something like, on that par.
100%. I mean, I built two businesses in my life that were also media driven. One was an ambient TV channel called Amos TV. And I tell everyone, there's no difference between being a CEO of a startup or independent business than making a movie. When you start a movie, you form the LLC and you have to raise the money, you create the product and then you distribute it. It's exactly like starting an independent small business.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an entire business side on top of the creative side, as you said.
Yeah, and as a director or a filmmaker that's doing an independent movie, you're wearing the producer's hat whether you want to or not, and constantly you're a pauper and a king at the same time, because everybody's looking up to you creatively, but you're a pauper begging the actors, begging financiers. It's really a humbling experience. And when you get to make a movie, especially an indie one, people say like it's just a wonder making a movie, because that's what it is. I mean, you have to have so many elements come together to make it happen. It's just astonishing.
So let's go back to the kind of the production sense for a second. So you did 2 weeks with the night, basically you're earlier in time, and then you all the flashback second, right? In the 1980s, and then we did the 30s, 40s.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. So that was 20 days, 4 weeks, 5 days a week.
Yeah, and after the second week, when we shot the 1980s, there was we had a new cast, new production design, new wardrobe, the entire everything shifted completely into a new movie essentially.
Yeah. So what are some of the unique challenges of doing a period piece specifically? Because normally like an independent film is going to be things that are a little easier to source production design. You find the right location, you're using clothes that are more available, vehicles. There are vehicles in this too. I mean, it seems like a logistics nightmare to try and do something like that.
I mean, it really is a logistics nightmare. You have to have a great team around you and a great line producer and great production designer and so on. But yeah, I mean, you have to, essentially, you can't shoot just, point and shoot, because you have to have everything around you, everything from the makeup to the set design to the background fit the time period. So there are many, many, many details going into it. And it was very, very hard. Even the 1980s, people think that it was probably might have been easier, but then you have cars in the background and you have to remove them, either visual effects or suddenly you have trucks in the background. You have to clear out the entire set and stuff. It just takes so long. So yeah, I mean, it's a big challenge, and it costs a lot of money because you have to ship out the wardrobe from, wherever you have to ship it out. You have to get these cars from, driving them from across the country and so on. You have to find the buildings, specific buildings. And then if you didn't manage to get everything in production, you have to go into post-production. You're spending a lot of money either building backgrounds or starting to erase things that are, not time appropriated in the frame. We spent a lot of, I think we had, all in all, I think close to 80 to 100 special effects, So, I mean, it gets costly.
Yeah, that's one of those things. If you either pay for it on set or you pay for it in post, like you're not getting away from it.
Exactly. And I have to tell every young filmmaker, if you have to shoot blood, try not doing it unless you're a big budget movie, and there are a lot of filmmakers that like doing blood in post. Shoot it, to get at least a few takes with real blood, with squibs on set, because it's going to cost you a lot of money and it's not going to look good unless you shoot it on set. And luckily we did shoot most of our blood on set. But don't make that mistake of thinking you can do good blood and post if you're doing an indie movie.
Yeah, luckily I've had the experience of like I got to do VFX on SNL, and one of the things we've ended up doing, or used to do a lot, was like sometimes fake blood effects because they just didn't have time or whatever, and it never looks, in my opinion, never looks right. Liquids are impossible.
And then you're trying to deal with 2D or 3D blood and like all that. I mean, it's just
it's exactly. So that's one thing. Yeah, that's always a great point. I think that's one of the times where you do need to really buckle down, and if at all possible, do it in person. There are other things you can get away with, but not blood. What did you guys do?
It's not easy though, right? That's one of the things that you would wish that you could do in post, because it's going to mess up clothes. You're going to have multiple, every time someone gets bloody, you have to have multiple outfits for that, and make it messy, but it's just one of those things you're going to have to grin and bear, I suppose.
Exactly. That's why, by the way, I had to cut out so many of the bloody scenes in the movie, just we didn't have time or money, and I had like, one big squib shot scene. There's a guy with a Tommy gun getting shot. So we had to use 2 cameras to shoot it. And I had just 1 take, and I had to pray to God that all of them explode and come out. If not, it's done. So,
and that's one of those takes where you're like watching the monitor and the actor misses their mark slightly, and they're like, hold, don't ever stop, stop, don't move.
The funny thing, I don't know if you saw the movie, but that Tommy gun scene, the guy there, they asked me, okay, how much blood do you want? Do you want small squibs, big squibs, or like the really, really large one? Obviously, as a filmmaker, I said, go all out with the big one. When he came on set, he looked like a Ninja Turtle. He looked like, we added like pounds. It was like, I'm like, fuck, we're going to have to fix that in special effects. And then when we did the special effects, we really had to make him thinner because he looked like he was, this guy wearing like this suit full of squibs that was huge, enormous. So.
Yeah, and oh man, yeah. So you only got 1 take of that. You didn't have a backup, or you just like time wise, this is it.
1 take. The first take was the squibs didn't, half of them didn't work, and then we had to do it all over again. And the second take, luckily, everything went perfect.
How many cameras did you roll on it?
2.
So on that note, just a little bit of tech talk for a sec. What did you guys shoot on?
We shot on Alexa Minis. And the reason, I had for me, it was there were other cameras that we were discussing, the Sony, the Red and stuff, but I shot my first movie on Alexa, and I liked the film look that it gave, especially with the shadows, and I didn't want to take risks on this movie, so I knew that I liked the way the Alexa looks, so we shot with the Alexa. And also, it's very important to have a good gaffer, and I had Jim Planetti, who's 82 years old. He shot E.T., he shot Braveheart, he shot some of the best movies that I grew up with. So between the Alexa and him lighting, and Peter Flinkerberg, which is an amazing DP, it was we managed to get the film look that we needed. We didn't even have to add too much grain post, so that was good.
That's great. Yeah, I have the same experience. Like, we have whenever we're filming at night and stuff, a lot of times DPs will say, like, especially if it's super tight, they'll be like, what if we do like the Venice or the Gemini or, the Varicam, some of the dual ISO. And I shoot on the Mini all the time. And I just know, I always say, like, the problem is I look at the monitor, I know what I'm looking at. You know what I mean? Like, and it might sound naive, but it's like, I trust it. I don't panic. I know how long, and I know what I can do with it in post. Like, so we don't need, I don't be like, there's no magic.
Yeah, I think you should definitely go with what you're comfortable with. And for me, it was the Alexa. Who knows what will happen in the next movie? But for this one, I think we did the right choice because people are raving at how good it looks. So
yeah. So how did COVID affect you guys?
Well, we didn't. The COVID affected us is that, finally, after I went through, 17, 18-hour days in Alabama for in 20 days shooting the film, I finally thought I could, it's in the can, fly out to LA, edit, peaceful, everything great. And then suddenly the pandemic hit and quarantine, and the producers called me up. They said, either we postpone post-production or we're moving you in with your editor, who I never really met. And he's a 70-year-old guy. His name is Martin Hunter. He did a Full Metal Jacket for Kubrick. We flew him out from Sweden. You're going to live with him and you're going to edit the movie. So, we all been through the pandemic, especially the first few weeks of quarantine. It was terrifying. We didn't know what it was. You thought you're walking out of the house, you're going to die the next day, and I'm here with the 70-year-old editor, which I really like, and we're suddenly roommates for the first 2 months. So yeah, that was a challenge. After 2 months, he left because he had to go back to his family, obviously. And then I had another great editor, Michael Shaver, who edited Black Panther and Creed and so on. He came in and kept working with me on the movie, and then he had to leave. And then finally we got Steven Rosenblum. And Steven Rosenblum is an iconic editor, nominated 3 times for an Oscar. The problem with him is that we couldn't edit, together in a room. So everything was done, on Zoom, and we had this specific software, I forgot the name of it, we were editing. The problem is you're doing it over Wi-Fi. And when you get down as a filmmaker, once you have the cut and you're starting to cut 24 frames from a scene, 8 frames, a beat, whatever, that's when it starts getting hard. So it took us a long time. Same with special effects, same with music. Everything was done over the internet, and it's hard. It's very, very hard. It's an experience that I don't recommend to anyone because when you're doing post-production, you want to be with the editor in the room. You want to feel the energy. You want to throw out ideas. Here you're cutting a scene, and then suddenly the Wi-Fi stops, or you can't hear him and stuff. It was just a very, very hard process.
Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare. I mean, that sounds like strict trying to do a movie where you're just like reviewing links and giving notes, and that, in my opinion, has never really worked very well.
Yeah, but we managed to get through it. The problem for me was that we couldn't do screenings. We had to do screenings online, and that is where it hurt, because usually when you have a movie, you can have a screening, you bring people, you get notes. In this case, we had to send it to people online. We didn't have access to as many people. The whole process was just hard. It started hard, got harder, and then got really, really hard. So, it's like a never-ending hardship,
Yeah, geez, dude.
Speaking of it being hard, let's go back to getting into Alabama, right? So shooting in a state that you may not have been, as familiar with, and may not be as much of a film hub as we're used to. How did you work? How did that work? Bringing in, did you bring in your key crew members and then book locally from there, or who did you bring in? Who did you put up in hotels? How did it all work getting the whole crew up in Alabama?
Yeah, we got the key crew, obviously all the above the line, but then we started getting crews in Alabama, and we brought them over also from New Orleans and stuff. They do have, a pretty good people and professionals from, in the South. So yeah, most of them that weren't the key crew we brought from Alabama. And I'm a New Yorker. I've been 20 years in the city. This was my first time in the Deep South. I didn't know what to expect, but I have to tell you that I met some of the most amazing, hardworking people over there. Everybody was sweet. There's a lot of kind of like misconceptions about the Deep South, maybe racism stuff. I didn't feel anything. It was just really good, hardworking people, and I loved it over there. I really, really loved it. There was a funny situation when we shot the Nazi bun scene. It was, all Alabama extras, and then you're walking into this room and you have the Nazi flag and everything like that. And I was like, for me as a Israeli American and a Jew, it was kind of like, whoa. But then eventually, and I had all these extras from Alabama, and when there was that whole Nazi scene, they had to be like these Nazis and, in the Bund. And, they were very shy when they had to like say Heil Hitler and so on. And then I'm running up on stage. I'm like, guys, you're not giving Hitler enough respect. I need you to do it like that. It was just a whole surreal moment. But really, shooting in Alabama is great. Any filmmaker, if you have the opportunity, the film commission there, everybody's very helpful. They're really, really sweet people. And I fell in love I always loved the South, but now I really love Alabama and the Deep South. So if you have the opportunity, go for it.
So after you, now instead of New York, you're going back to Alabama, turning that into your home.
I don't know if I'm turning it into my home, but I'd be happy to shoot there. My next movie has to do in the South. I'd be happy to shoot there in Alabama. New York is great to shoot. It's just so expensive. So, my first movie we actually shot in New York, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, if you have the opportunity, it's a great place to be. They love indie.
One of the main characters is a reporter. It's the scenes again in the 80s with Harvey Keitel. It's kind of loosely based on interviews your father did with him, right? You said he wrote a book, and that's how did that play?
So my father met Meyer Lansky before he died, around 1980s, and interviewed him. So I took the transcripts, and then we went and we wrote the screenplay. And but I also did a lot of research because I wanted to have an objective. I didn't want to glorify him, so I did take creative liberties, and some of the parts that you see in the movie are fiction, but most of the things that you see are historically accurate. So we did a lot of research. I read, there's one book, Little Man, that was a great book about Meyer Lansky biography. And we spent a lot of time and did research, but it is based on my father's meeting him, but everything around the character in the movie didn't happen. The love story and so on.
Yeah. So you're the director screenwriter, right? So what's the difference between, if you're looking back on this, what is the movie you wrote versus the movie you shot versus the movie you edited?
It's three completely different movies. I mean, they're very close, but they always say that the movie that you write, the movie you direct, and the movie you edit are three different movies, and it's true. Just as comparison, the screenplay was 130 pages long. I had to bring it down to 100 pages. So the screenwriter, all the love and all the scenes that I liked, I had to cut out. Then when you're on set, they're saying, well, this we have to turn from day to night, and this takes place in a diner, but now we can't shoot in the diner. So everything starts changing. And also when you get on set, when you have great actors, they improvise. And I like having great actors improvise. I think 95% of what Harvey Keitel improvised is in the movie. And there's some, great lines and great improvisations there. And so did Sam and other people. So yeah, I mean, the screenplay that you write is going to be butchered because you go into production and, and it sometimes it comes better, sometimes not. And then when you edit it, a lot of the things you envisioned either don't work out. Maybe they work out great on paper, but it doesn't work when you're editing the movie, and it slows it down. So it's really three different movies. But a screenplay, you have to have a good screenplay. The screenplay is the basis of everything. It's almost like a blueprint. Consider it a good business plan we're talking about businesses. It's a good business plan. But I don't know how much of the screenplay is on screen, but it's definitely 40% of what you wrote won't end up on screen to a certain extent.
So speaking of working with actors, and what was it like working with kind of more high profile actors in a indie feature? Were there challenges just in terms of the creature comforts they required, or the things that their union required, and what was it like working with them technique wise?
So it's first of all, it's terrifying in general when you didn't direct a movie in a few years, and suddenly you have Harvey Keitel and Sam Worthington on set doing the first take, and then Harvey just looks at you and you have 100 people on set, and he's like, how was it? And it was okay, but not that great, and you have to tell them it was good, but it could be better. It's terrifying, but you become their friends eventually, and it gets easier. Obviously, when you have big actors on set, it costs more for production and Harvey is older now, so where you put them, they have to have their own drivers, the hotels and stuff. So it is costly for production, but for an independent movie, it's worthwhile. Every actor has his own process. I mean, Harvey Keitel is a method actor. He's a great method actor, one of the greatest, learn from the greatest. For instance, when I was working with him, he said to me, never tell me how to feel, only give me action. It's one thing he was adamant about, never let how to feel. So you have to kind of think of how you approach every scene and how you talk to them and how you get what you need from them. Then you have other actors, like for instance, Anna Sophia Robb, who's a tremendous actor. She's like, tell me everything. Tell me how to feel. Tell me how to move. Give me an action. So it really depends on each actor. I also had that with my first movie. Louisa, she really was a method actor. Jason Patrick was a great actor. He was less. But every time he was on set, you told him what you needed, what you wanted, and he killed it. So you really kind of have to just like you meet different people, just figure out how they work, talk to them, see some of them bring all the thunder and the best performances in the first take. So do you want to shoot a wide shot of Harvey when his first 3 takes are the best ones, because on the 5th, 6th take, he starts getting tired. Some actors need a warm-up. You really, really have to figure with each actor how to work, and then kind of frame not only how you talk to them and bring out the best performance, but also how you frame the movie. With Harvey, I always started with, the mediums and close-ups, and then went to the wides, for instance.
Yeah, that's very smart. I mean, but you're having to figure that out on the fly because I'm guessing you didn't get like much rehearsal or, probably like just a read through with them.
Yeah, I literally had maybe a day rehearsal with them. So yeah, we have to figure it on the fly. You have to be, you know, very fast, very quick. But as a director, you know how to talk to people, you know how to direct them. And I always tell directors, study acting just so you can know how an actor thinks and how to direct every single book that you can about directing actors, about being an actor, because
Mhm.
that's easier for you to communicate with them. I can build amazing worlds around it, and we all see the big budget movies that look beautiful, shot beautifully, but if you don't have great actors around you, the movie is not going to work, because at the end of the day it comes down to human emotion and how they feel and how they connect to the characters.
Yeah, both our training is in are as actors first, James and mine both. And I can tell you as coming from that world, like it is, and it's something that filmmakers don't think about. But you walk into a room, all of a sudden you're brought in, everyone kind of treating you with kid gloves, and you can feel that energy. And then you walk into front of something, you got lines and a character that you haven't really rehearsed before with anyone, just your idea. And then you sit around and they put garbage all around you and these huge flags and these huge lights. You have no idea what's going on. And then 7 or 8 people are talking at once. And then all of a sudden everyone shuts up, points a camera at you, and somebody yells action.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
and so it is, you do have to really, it is being on an island. It is the most visible island at any given moment, but it's something, that I don't think if you don't have experience doing that as a director, an indie director, you need to get it really quick, because you're never going to be able to direct someone, in my opinion, in an efficient way if you've not had that experience of that vulnerability.
Exactly. And a director is just as good as his actors, just as he's just as good as the crew that he has. But if you don't have the actors, if you don't choose the right actors, you can have the best screenplay, the best DP, the best everything, the movie's going to fail because it won't communicate to the audience. So.
When did Vertical come on?
So, as I was saying, we had a problem raising equity for the movie. So the way we did it, structured it, we got a foreign sales company. They took the cast that we had, they started doing foreign sales, sold most of the world to Universal. So we had a big chunk of money from, the $5 million budget in foreign sales before we went in. Vertical gave us a backstop deal. A backstop deal means that they'll pay you. They say, okay, we'll give you $1 million, but we have the rights to distribute your movie domestically. So even if the movie is great and you can sell it for $10, $20 million, they're going to have the right to sell the movie. There are ways that you can get out of a backstop deal, but it's very, very hard. So filmmakers know if they get into a backstop deal, that's going to be a distributor. So they gave us $1 million. Vertical is a great company. What I liked about them is that, as an independent filmmaker, as opposed to sending it directly to Amazon or Netflix, and people can, as an original, and they can only watch it on Amazon, Netflix, when you have a distributor like Vertical, so they'll release it on all the VOD platforms, you'll get a Blu-ray DVD release, you'll get a small theatrical, and then eventually it will go to the streamers, so you get as many people as possible to watch it. But so, what is it? So between, so between Universal giving Universal and the foreign sales, Vertical, we had not sure, but I think close to half of the budget. And then we had, tax incentives from Alabama, and then the rest we raised equity, pieces of $300,000, $400,000, and so on, until we got the full budget that we needed, which was already $3 million below what we really needed, but that's what we had.
From a business perspective, I mean, you really, that is the dream model. Like, right? Most people can't achieve that because they don't get an attachment like Harvey Keitel that early on. And it's hard to make a budget until you have someone like that. Because if you don't get a Harvey, this movie might be 2 million, 1 million. You know what I mean? It's like, but now you got him. Now you can secure some distribution. That's really interesting and very smart that you're able to get him, then do all that financing to get half that in place. Because then now the equity raise is much easier.
Yeah, it's much easier, but it's also like, you'd be surprised what actor, the main thing in making an independent movie, the backstop deals, usually independent movies won't get, above $1 million or $1.5 million, 2 million. And it is based on actors, but foreign sales is really where it's at and the most important thing. And you'd be surprised what actors have value in other countries that you wouldn't even think about. So, not going into too much detail, but somebody like Harvey that would be worth here most money, maybe in Europe it would be, or in China, or in Asia, or Europe, it would be Sam Worthington, or Anna Sophia Robb, or Mika Kelly. You'd be surprised, what audiences in foreign countries consider, big actors or pulled. So you just have to get the best cast possible, being in touch with your foreign sale. We had a foreign sales company that was attached before we started shooting, and they helped us get the money that we needed. And they told us we need X, Y, and Z to make this, to get this budget, and this is the amount of money, this is what we can sell. And then you have a situation where you have pre-sales where people start giving you money actually for the movie, which is the best situation to be. And then you have foreign sale estimates. And when you have estimates, you can go with that to a company that loans you the money. We had 120DB. They look at our foreign estimates, they look at the pre-sales, and then they gave us a certain amount of money, and we got a loan from them, and that's how we covered a big chunk of the movie as well.
Yeah, and then you debt finance it on the backside. That makes total sense. So, yeah, that's really. Was there ever a conversation with Vertical about whether you were going to do a theatrical run or not, and whether it was the best?
Yeah, I mean, a theatrical run, people, they'll give you the minimal theatrical run because for independent distributors, they want to do a theatrical run because then they can put it when the movie comes out in the folder in theaters, which brings in a lot of money. So they'll give you the minimal theatrical run, which I think is 15 or 20 films. If they really like the movie, they start rolling it out. We have a good movie, and so they're rolling out in probably 150 screens in the next 2-3 weeks. Again, depends how good the movie is, but usually you'll get a small theatrical run so they can get for marketing, for critics, and then so it can be in this folder in theaters. There are certain like caveats of getting it and what prices you can charge if it's not in theaters versus if it's in a small amount of theaters.
That totally makes sense. So, I mean, I think that's a really interesting, theatrical runs are just big question mark. A year ago, who knew if that was even going to be a thing that was going to be available in 2021,
Exactly. What I specifically like about Vertical is also on the creative side, they were very, very helpful to me. They allowed me to do the poster that I wanted. I was very, very much involved in the trailer, literally, telling them how to cut what I want in. So they were creatively, they give me the freedom. So, I mean, they were a great company for independent filmmakers in general.
Yeah, the films I've seen that they carry are very strong too. Like I really am impressed every time we see a Vertical film. I'm like, okay, this is a different, it's a different tier of indie film.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to get growing and kind of like trying to get bigger and bigger project, bigger names. I think they had did a good job with Lansky because they just read the screenplay, saw the cast, and they bet on it, and they did well.
So what's next for? Sorry, James, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, we got right through distribution. Was there a film festival run or a film festival experience that played into this film, or how did that work for you?
No, the thing is, because all the festivals were getting closed down and shut down, and we already had distribution, then we really didn't need to go into festivals. Like in my first movie, we really needed festivals, and we went to Chicago and LA. I remember when we started putting offers, and once we got into the LA Film Festival and Chicago International Film Festival, suddenly the prices jumped up. And this was a situation where we already had distributors. We had a lot of money behind it. Then, some people didn't want us to be in certain festivals for certain reasons. And, so, and with everything going on in COVID and all the great festivals kind of like shutting down and watching everybody doing virtual screenings, we just kind of like passed that.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how it comes back. It was a doozy of a 2-year cycle for the festivals. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay, before we move on to what you have going on next, I always want to hear what your favorite or one of your most memorable, joyful experiences was from set. And then, we're going to ask, one of the worst memories as well.
Oh, I see. I think the most favorable was the last day shooting with Harvey Keitel. We had a beautiful location. It was, in one location, we managed to get 5 different setups, different scenes. And it was just it was shot in the synagogue, and Harvey's, Jewish. So it was very emotional for him, for me. And it was a beautiful scene. And, it was the last day with Harvey, and we were just crying and hugging. And it was also the last scene of the movie where he was, over his dying son's, that scene, which was very, very emotional for him. And it was just, me and Harvey became best friends. We talk like twice a week. We meet up once a week when we're in LA. I mean, my relationship with him and that specific day was so emotional for both of us. That was my favorite day on set. The worst day on set was, and this is a lesson for filmmakers. I had probably one of the greatest scenes in the screenplay, and it was a scene where Harvey Keitel, at 80 years old, meets thugs in the street, and he basically scares them off. It was a very, very powerful scene. It probably, if I shot that movie, that would be the scene that would be on YouTube. That would be the scene everybody talks about. I knew it was a special scene, and we had a location to shoot it, but me and the DP didn't like it visually. And they said, listen, you have time to shoot this scene right now. Do you want to do it? And me and he said, do we have time tomorrow? They said, yes, we can do it tomorrow at this location, which was beautiful under a bridge. Looks like Miami, looks like a place in Miami. And me and the DP decided, let's shoot it tomorrow. And then the next day, it was pouring rain. We couldn't shoot the scene, and the scene didn't end up in the movie. And that was heartbreaking for me because I knew I couldn't shoot it. And it was all because me and the DP wanted to have a better visual background. I missed probably one of the greatest scenes in the movie. So a big lesson to filmmakers. If you have the opportunity to shoot a scene, doesn't matter where it is, get it, because you might not have another chance to do it afterwards. And and I have to live with that small mistake or big mistake for the rest of my life, but I had it there, and it could have been an iconic scene, and we didn't have it because I sacrificed the background for that scene, and I didn't get to shoot it the next day. So that was probably one of the worst. I mean, I'm telling you, this could have been an iconic. Even Harvey said, this is the scene, and we just couldn't shoot it the next day, and then he had to leave, and then we started, and it was all because we didn't want a background of a diner. You know, it was such a stupid mistake. So if you have it up, if you're doing an indie movie, you have the time, you shoot the scene. If you get another chance to shoot it in a better location, do it, but get it. And I didn't do the same mistake with the ending of the movie, and you guys saw it, which is the ending where Harvey walks on the beach. That wasn't my original beach. They said to me, you can shoot it now or shoot it later. I said, I'm not going to do the same mistake again. I shot that scene, and then it turned out to be better even than the scene that I really wanted it to be. And we had that bird flying out of nowhere and, you know, whatever. But you live and learn. You always learn. So
that bird was the universe giving you, be like, hey, good job, you know?
Exactly. You did it. You got this one scene.
That's heartbreaking, man. That's got to be a real kick to the gut, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard. And then you go back, and then when the movie is released, you know, you think of things you could have done, you could have shot, the way you could have edited, the best way to go. And it's hard. I know every filmmaker goes through this, through the comments, through the reviews, through everything. You know, just don't, you know, badger yourself too much about it. It's done. On to the next one. Delete the files. Learn from it. Everything is a learning experience. It's a privilege to make movies. It's a privilege to make independent cinema. You know, it's better. Harvey told me before, you know, when we finished the movies and I had all these concerns, he said to me, shoot to the stars. Even if you fall, at least you're falling among them. And, you know, I kept that with me.
So what's next for you? You got a third movie in the work, correct?
Or yeah, I have a big sci-fi fantasy movie that, you know, is kind of like, it's a bigger one that's going to be in development for a while, but that's kind of like my tentpole type movie. I have another movie that with a very big writer, Alan Loeb, that, you know, we're going to go hopefully into production. It's a cop thriller. And I'm actually doing in the process of writing another contained sci-fi movie, but I think that the next movie is going to be, you know, the Alan Loeb screenplay and two sci-fi fantasy films that I have an urge on. You know, I don't have a specific genre. I just like good stories.
Yeah, I was about to say, returning back to some genre work.
Genre work, yeah. I like world building, so it's time. You know,
there you go.
You watch this. I paid my dues from the first movie to this movie. I paid my dues. I want, you know, a bigger budget now. I shot this in 20 days. I don't want to worry about money, and I want to actually have enough time to shoot something. You know, it's always going to be a challenge, but at least give me the minimum. I didn't have the minimum here, so.
Yeah, well, I think you still did a great job, man, and congratulations on the release so far. I hope we see it on 150 screens. I'd love to see it in the theater too.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's going to be in a rollout. Check it out.
For everyone listening, the film is LANKSY. It already came out in select theaters starting on June 25th, and I believe it's on demand now. Where can people go to find this movie?
Right now, it's also in theaters, but everywhere: iTunes, Amazon, Fandango, Redbox. I mean, it's all over the place. We're number 3 in the country right now across all platforms, most of them top 5. And check it out.
All right, go check it out. That's Lansky, Lansky. How about you? Where can people follow? Check out with you. Do you have a website and Instagram?
Yeah, I mean, Instagram is Rockaway, so it's Rockaway. I'm also on Twitter, and yeah, both of those would be great.
All right. Thanks so much for being with us today, man. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Filmmaking is a collaborative experience, and so is this podcast. Please take a second to subscribe so you know about future episodes, and leave a review. It really does help us. For more info about today's guest, please visit independentfilmmakersguide.com, where you can check out all our episodes that run the gamut of filmmaking topics. They're available in both audio and video format.
IFG is created by Framework Productions. This episode was hosted and directed by Stephen Pierce and James Allerdyce. It was produced and edited by Matt Mundy and Audrey Ray McHale. The music is by Glassboy. Find his music on freemusicarchive.org. See and listen to all the episodes at independentfilmmakersguide.com. Thanks for listening. Hey friends, we just wanted to take a quick moment to talk about 2 personal things. First, we wanted to thank you, our listening community, and our wonderful guests, learning so much together along the way and continuing to learn, sharing our stories, making a lot of new friends, and collaborating, which is exactly what this is all about. Which also brings me to my second point. In great part to many of these new relationships, we wanted to let you know that we've taken a lot of this advice ourselves and made our own narrative feature film, Herd. H-E-R-D, Herd, which is premiering this October on Friday the 13th in select theaters as well as on VOD. Personally, I think it's the perfect kind of scary movie to watch during our favorite scary season. So we'd love for you to celebrate with us and watch Herd. You can pre-order it on Apple TV and, of course, do the communal thing, see it in theaters. Of course, for all of this, please see our show notes, but basically, we're going to keep it all updated at herd.film. That's herd.film, herd.film as well. Thank you again, and be sure to give us a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts so we can continue to build this community and collaborate. IFG, how movies get made.